We're talking Laois, obviously. Let's relive the magic now from the Midlands 103 commentary. This is interesting because Jack Nolan and Shane Stapleton were on commentary duty as Laois edged out the Dubs. If you've got headphones on, this audio is peaking and slightly distorted, but trust us, it's worth it.
He drills it into the clouds. It's a massive puck. Dropping to... Oh! 71 minutes, 29 seconds. A half a minute for Laois to hang on. Massive puck out. Going to drop around the square. All hands up. Hurls up as well. 72 minutes played. After the ball, it's a full back. Shane Barrett, referee, looks at his watch. Let's play go on. Dublin with one more last chance. Up to go for the ball. It breaks down. Dublin have it on the edge of the big square. That's to go for a goal. Send it all back. Well, brought to ground. 20 metre free to the right of the post. Second yellow card for John Lennon. Yellow, red is Sean Morton. 20 metre free. 5 men on the line. Laois 122. Dublin 20 points. He has to go for a goal. 38 minutes has been played. He has brought the ball in closer to the goal. Laois players tell him that. He must go. A goal for Dublin. It goes to extra time. John Morton buys the ball. Oh, it's saved it over the bar. John Morton puts it over. Laois ahead by a goal. The shock of the year. What a shock. The crowd come onto the field.
Oh my God, that's history. We see Westmeath getting hammered today and everyone's saying the Joe McDonough team shouldn't be in this. Well, Laois have rubbish that there now. You can see Ender Rowland getting mobbed. A couple of those late frees, incredible. The bookies had the odds out for a tip against Dublin next week. Well, you may put them up for Laois against tip now and let them go on the beer for half the week too if they want to do them no harm today.
The biggest shock this year, last year, for a long time.
For a long time.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. It's like this is one of the all-time great shocks. Daithi Regan, good morning to you.
Morning, Ger. How are you?
I have a vague recollection of the Antrim hurlers beating Dublin when Daithi was in charge. I can't remember. I mean, the Antrim hurlers beaten Offaly in 1989. I'm trying to think back for other seismic shocks in hurling history, and geez, I can't really remember that many.
Yeah, there's not a whole pile really, to be honest with you. Unfortunately, I was involved that day against Antrim, and everybody praising Offaly for clapping Antrim off the field. We actually kind of stood around because we were trying to take in what had just happened. We were as hot of favourites as Dublin were yesterday, but I haven't been as impressed by a performance from a team. Laois played in a very specific manner yesterday, and I suspected during the course of the game that they might tighten up in their hurling. I spoke to Vincent Hogan afterwards and he said, I thought they might tighten up. They pretty much didn't waste any ball. They refused to strike the ball aimlessly. They must have had every single hand pass. I don't remember one going to ground. And these were hand passes that were being given to players coming off the shoulder at pace. Everything was executed. The basics of the game, they executed. But they just fundamentally refused to strike a long ball for the sake of doing it. They broke tackle after tackle. With 15 minutes to go, Dublin levelled it up, and I thought this is the first time we will probably see a chink, that they'll be forced in their hurling, they'll be hurried in their hurling, and they'll aimlessly hit it down the field. As soon as Dublin equalised, they just worked it through again. Every single player that had the ball was always looking to offload or play a ball to the benefit of a forward. And Dublin couldn't break it down. Dublin had no pattern to theirs type of hurling. And the way it looked to me was that Eddie Brennan had set them up that this is the way we play. If we play well, inflicting our game plan, we'll beat these guys. And he more or less said that afterwards. And I didn't know if that brand of hurling could be sustained for 70 minutes because it's got to be very exact. But they just refused. They were so disciplined. I was so impressed with Laois yesterday. They never at one stage ever were hurried. Every player was confident on the ball. They tackled like demons when they didn't have it. But it's when they had it. They were just fantastic, Ger, and to watch it there in the flesh, at the move and the speed of their movement and the offloading game, and Dublin's forwards didn't tackle hard enough throughout the game to force them to hit it long. They just stuck to their game plan, and it was extraordinary to watch it unfold.
Let's hear from Eddie Brennan now. Stay with us, Daithi. Here's Eddie Brennan speaking in the aftermath of the game to Trasa.
It's a massive piece of history, and we're not going to forget the 7th of July for a long time, and people in Laois are, and it's brilliant for that. But and I'd say at times today I probably lost control of my emotions for a little bit on the sideline because
I wonder where you got that from.
Yeah, I saw a few, mad decisions there at the end that sometimes the bigger teams get when our guys were working really, really hard. But that's the way hurling goes. That's the ebb and the flow of it, and it was never going to affect the outcome. To be fair, every time the boys just rolled with the punch and they responded, and that's the one thing I've asked them all year, is that they respond to every setback. We just come back, we keep coming back, and the composure they showed at the end to shoot a couple of points, and even Paddy came up there and shot a massive point when we really, really needed it.
I want to let you go back with just one more thing now. You were saying, it felt like a bit of a wet tea towel in the face. Unexpectedly, against all predictions, you're now through to next week against Tipperary. Is that a wet tea towel, a dry tea towel, a block? What's that in the face?
It's like a good.
Matt Corcoran's giving his helmet here now.
It's like a good belt of a hurl that won't break. Yeah, look, that's what's there, and I'm not. It would be easy for me to come out and not, talk about this fixture. And I suppose more so, look, we're on a great bounce here tonight. We've upset the odds in a big, big way. But to me, I feel sorry for Westmeath having beaten in a final last week and having to go through a fixture like that. That's supposed to be that's a reward apparently for getting to a final. And those Westmeath lads, I have huge admiration for them that they went and faced into that today, because I think on the other side of the coin you could be saying, listen, no thanks, you're grand, because what sport across the world plays a final and then has lads to go play a match? And it would be easy for me to just disregard that opinion, and I feel strongly on that. But look, we've just turned over the odds today. This wasn't the script, this wasn't the narrative. But I suppose quietly, I go back to Friday night. I felt leaving Friday night that these boys were in a good place, and I couldn't be more happy for them. They're a brilliant bunch of fellas, and I just want them to enjoy this today. Yeah,
look, Daithi, we can talk about the unfairness on Westmeath as well, but we should just talk a little bit more about Laois, and clearly the value of playing hurling when the weather is good all the way into July is benefiting this team. And I think that's the lesson that we need to learn here, is that teams develop really well as the season goes on and progresses, particularly in a technical sport like hurling, where they're clearly benefiting from the extra month and a half of training that they would have had from previous seasons.
They are, Jared. It's a good point. And I mean, the other side of the coin is we had one what would be considered major upset yesterday. You were never going to get two Joe McDonagh teams coming up. There's a gulf in hurling between those top 5 or 6 teams and then what's coming afterwards. What Laois have shown is, with superb management, with a core group of players coming together, believing in the message and bringing it to the training park, because that performance yesterday manifested itself from just down in the training park, implementing it, and obviously implementing it at speed, believing in the manager, who obviously has a history of listening to Brian Cody for a number of years. So he brings his own personality to bear on it, but obviously everything he's picked up along the way from Cody, you could just clearly see that it flowed through his own players yesterday. So we were never going to get two of them, because there is a gulf. But what Laois have shown is that if you bring a superb management team in and a core group of players who believe the message from day one, and they've got to buy into it from day one, and there's a bit of a message there maybe for other teams lower down to maybe look at the likes of the Kilkennys, look at some of these marvellous players that won All-Ireland finals, and take a chance on them in relation to maybe bringing them into your own county as a manager. If it's a thing they're ambitious down the line for the likes of Kilkenny, let them cut their teeth at the lower levels. Because if Eddie Brennan walks into a Laois camp with 8 All-Ireland medals or whatever in his back pocket, and he tells them, this is what I'm going to do, isn't he a really easy guy to listen to? And it's very, very interesting. You might thank me for this, but I was thinking coming home from the game yesterday, wouldn't I love to see the Offaly County Board go to Tommy Walsh and say, listen, if you have any ambitions, would you come and talk to us? We'd like to talk to you and bring you in. Because imagine having a guy like Tommy Walsh walking into your camp and saying, I'm a new manager for the next couple of years. If you're a player, wouldn't you just be so excited to have a personality like that in your dressing room? Because you listen to everything. And if he's plausible, which he is, of course, we all know, very plausible, there's a basis for starters for teams at that particular level. So I would commend Eddie Brennan. I couldn't commend him enough. He's done an absolutely superb job, and the players have bought into it.
That's such a good shout, Daithi. Like, I mean, we've spoken a bit in both codes over the last couple of weeks about how resources could be used better to promote hurling and indeed football in some of the so-called weaker counties in terms of bringing them up to the required elite levels. But there's also the non-financial resources. There is the brains of hurling that have been, I guess, confined to certain counties like Kilkenny for years.
Well, yeah, I mean, we made the point yesterday. Eddie Brennan is his own man, and he brings his own personality to bear, and that's obviously been a success because he's plausible and the players believe it. But from every aspect of his preparation of a team, he doesn't have to look too far back into his career to be able to lean on somebody, i.e. Brian Cody, and say, well, this is the way Cody did it. So he knows how Cody treated his players and the different personalities within. So somebody like that with a reserve of information on how to manage and manage players, and then to boot, you bring your own personality to bear on it. It's a winning formula. From the point of view, it's very easy to sit down with a county like Laois or Offaly or Carlow or teams that have never known success. I mean, people say Laois were starved of success. They haven't been starved of success. They've never had success. So it's a whole new phenomenon for them. But if you have someone like a JJ Delaney going in, or Henry Shefflin as in Shamrocks, the likes of a Tommy Walsh, Eddie Brennan walking into your dressing room, you grab attention immediately. It's not very difficult to come out of your first meeting and say to your selectors, what do you think? Do you think they bought into what we're trying to do? Because if Tommy Walsh or these guys, and I'm sitting down and I'm listening to what they've got to say, I'm hanging on every word. And the first thing I'm doing is, I can't wait to get to the training ground, learn from this guy and show him what I can do. And when you bring that whole package together, because the players are the key component here. Laois were extraordinary yesterday, what they did to maintain the level of discipline. The execution was absolutely superb. And they hurled it as a mirror image of what their manager brings to it. So I think there might be a lesson for people to look at some of these great Kilkenny players if they're ambitious. David Herity has been very involved as well in Camogie, and I've met the guy on a couple of occasions, and I was absolutely struck listening to him. That here's a guy now, and I'm long finished, I could listen to you all day. And if you have characters like that, surely to God it's worth at least investigating a conversation with them.
Yeah, Herity's unbelievably impressive, and I think he got that role as a goalkeeper, understands the whole importance of puck-out strategy way more than maybe some of the outfield players would tend to do, because that was the one thing that he had to perfect. But he's also a brilliant communicator as well, so you can see him. We were half joking earlier on about the shortlist to replace Brian Cody. For the longest time, it looked like nobody would really want the job.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, you kind of think that, well, Henry probably would want the job because he's cut his teeth and won a Club All-Ireland as a manager, and now we have another candidate straight to the top of the queue with what he's done at Laois in Eddie Brennan, and suddenly Kilkenny look like they'll be okay whenever Brian Cody goes.
Well, you've got DJ as well with the 21s. It's interesting you brought it up, because one of my colleagues travelled over with me this morning, and that was the top of your conversation. You know, which of the boys would replace Cody? So you've got, for a long time, nobody's name was mentioned. And now you're looking at what Eddie is doing, you're looking at what DJ is doing, and these are ambitious fellas. And if you're ambitious, you want to train your own county. Canavan always comes to mind with me in Tyrone. And I've often felt, because he's a clubmate of Mickey Hart, I think it's probably why he's been reticent to publicly say. And I think he's probably waiting for the Mickey maybe to walk away from it. So Kerry wins an under-21 All-Ireland this year with Kilkenny. Well, he's in the frame. Henry, for obvious reasons, he's won a Club All-Ireland final, and he's a player that is going to be easy to listen to. Eddie's coming up and he's trained Kilkenny under-21s. Now, if you remember, a couple of years ago, when he trained them, they lost to Westmeath, and they lost an All-Ireland final when he came in for a lot of criticism. But he didn't hide. He stuck at the management game. I think the likes of Eddie and going to counties like Laois is the right way forward, because it builds character. You're going into a county who've been starved of success. So what you've got to do is invest the time, number one, but to convince a group of people that are good enough to be able to play to a high level, compete, but actually win as well. That's a harder job that Eddie has, and that's why I admire what he's done in Laois. So he's definitely a bona fide candidate.
Yeah, no, for sure. Got to talk about Dublin, because this is a humiliating defeat for them. You know, if the whole rest of the country was talking about the fixture against Tipperary, no doubt they were planning for that too, because that's how you assume a Division 1 team is going to fare against a team who, let's face it, has been part of that gulf in class has been evident there. They knocked Galway out of the All-Ireland competition this year. Like it's it was a really good year up until yesterday for Dublin hurling, and now automatically it becomes a really bad year because of a shock defeat like this.
That's very true. I mean, they had a superb Leinster campaign.
Oh, Daithi Skype has just gone there. We'll try and get him back to get his thoughts on the situation with regards to the fallout from a Dublin perspective. We get him back now.
It's interesting stuff there on the coaches from the top teams going to the less successful teams and what they can bring. It's clearly something that brings an added boost to each dressing room, to each county, and maybe that's just that little bit of inspiration that these teams need.
Yeah, even the big teams, like you see the success that Davy has outside of Clare as well. Like, it's clear that a voice from outside the county is important in loads of different ways and loads of different times. There were so many of those Kilkenny lads who were of a similar standard that you were like, well, what's going to happen to these? Who's going to put their hand up? And as I rightly pointed out, the defeat to Westmeath was a seismic, and that was actually probably the last great hurling shock that you can remember, when Westmeath under-21s beat Kilkenny under-21s. And it's funny, Eddie Brennan's involved in both of them. Has experienced that other side of it and has now come through the other side, this side. Daithi, we're just going to wrap this up here with two more minutes on the Dubs. You were cut off there just as we were talking about how bad a year ultimately this ends up being for Dublin, and how do they recover from this?
Yeah, ultimately it's a disappointing year for Dublin, and the wins and the successes in Leinster will be immediately forgotten because of the manner it is. They were outfought and outthought yesterday. To me, they looked like a team that were bereft of ideas, and at any given time we were waiting for them to try and force Laois into mistakes, but that intensity and urgency wasn't there. I think Matty Kenny will have regrets. I think he'll forensically look at what happened. What they'll do is they'll look at the preparation and they'll look at the mindset. They'll look at themselves. The first thing the management will do is to look at themselves and they'll question whether the preparation was right. Did they have Dublin to the right pitch yesterday to avoid a potential banana skin? From what I've seen, no, absolutely not. I think too many players weren't as hungry for the thing as Laois were. And with Laois and the preparation that they had and the mindset that they had, you can't change your mind halfway during the game. And Joe asked me this yesterday. At half-time, what does Matty Kenny say? And the difficulty is, if not enough of them are tuned in, you can't change enough mindsets at half-time. And I think Laois's preparation, Laois's mentality was, this is it, it's all or nothing. We're going to die on our feet here and we're going to win it. And not enough Dublin players brought that intensity to it. And they got caught out, but it wasn't a fluke. They were beaten by a team playing a far better brand of hurling, who stuck to their task and who executed it. So it's a dismal finish to the year for Dublin, an absolute dismal finish. But the right man, in my view, is at the helm. He will learn for this, because this was a sucker punch yesterday. This will hurt very, very deeply.
Daithi, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Bye, lads.
Daithi Regan giving us some thoughts there and some insight into yesterday's game. I don't know what's going to happen with Dublin, because it is such a huge setback for them when you consider that they were definitely looking forward to that game against Tip. And again, I said this earlier, not necessarily, I don't think they were going to win that game. It's obviously not looking very wise after the event here, but you felt like there was something there for them. Like there was an aggression that they could have brought to that game that would have been a massive building block for Dublin into the future, right? And who knows? Hurling is weird. Your inside forward suddenly gets a bit of space and there's 2 goals up, and it's like, well, there's momentum here in Tipperary. You're like, okay, this isn't working for us, but like, that's all gone. This is a disaster.
It's amazing how the conclusion to a season can completely affect how it's going to proceed for the next season, because this year was supposed to end with them putting in an honourable performance against Tipperary, a real sign that they had progressed to the point where they were within the top 3 teams in Leinster and deserved to be there. But here we are, and now there's a real disaster scenario for Dublin hurling. This has been a horrendous end to what was a great season, because it comes from the heights of what happened in Parnell Park at the end.
We had a brilliant roadshow with our friends at Free Now last week, featuring Paul McGrath, Jimmy Heaslip, Andy Lee and Cleona O'Connor. Here's Jimmy Heaslip talking about Joe Schmidt setting out his stall at Leinster. Have a look.